How's it going, everyone? So today we're going to be discussing what is my 10,000 miles of ownership in my Volvo XC60. It's a 2019 R Design XC60. It's in white. There's a previous video which we'll link in one of these two corners. Still don't know which one, to be honest. But first things first in this video, we're going to crack into a beverage real quick while I admit to you guys that I actually lied. This is not a 10,000 mile ownership review. It's actually 11,000 miles. I hit my 10,000 miles, stuff got busy with work, went on some hikes, did some camping, but I'm actually extremely grateful that the video got delayed because it allowed me to get some additional insights to discuss in today's video, and I'm extremely glad because it gave me some more stuff to cover in the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you guys want timestamps to those down below, they will be in the description of the video for when we're discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Probably in that order. But with that being said, let's first take a sip. Today's drink is Bum Energy and the root beer flavor. Absolutely tastes like diet root beer. Would recommend trying it if it's something you'd be interested in. But let's actually disconnect this from the keyboard and just read it like we're reading a book here. So first things first, the good. Fuel economy. Over the last 11,000 miles of ownership, we're currently averaging 24.4 to 24.7 miles per gallon. Now, I know that might not sound incredible, but just to relay that a little bit, my engine is the T6, so it is a turbocharged and supercharged engine. It is an all-wheel drive vehicle. We're in Colorado at about a mile above sea level. Primarily, a lot of my driving is highway, but there's a lot of traffic as I am working 4 days a week, and it is at least 20 miles driven a day, and at least half of those miles are in heavier traffic for rush hour traffic. Additionally, this vehicle is over 5,000 pounds. It's heavy, it's an SUV, so it should not be that aerodynamic. There's no hybrid systems or anything else assisting it. So to get 24.4 to 24.7 miles per gallon is higher than what the combined figure should be because I do city driving as well as highway driving. But with that being said, the highest MPG that I've ever gotten is around 46 to 47 miles per gallon, and that was over 60 miles while driving back from a 14er that I did recently. We will pop up a picture of the gauge cluster of the vehicle on one of the two sides of the screen that does show what the actual figure is, what the mileage is, and everything like that. But it is capable of getting really good mileage, especially if you're not necessarily nuking it with the supercharger too much. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another one that was brought up to me, and I honestly never really thought about it, is I was watching a video from Topher Drives, and he was talking about Volvos just being the ultimate road trip vehicle. Or dailies, and I didn't really think about that too much until they mentioned like the steering rack and the forces, where Volvo does a variable weighted steering, it feels like, and it never really dawned on me until they talked about it in the video, which is why I want to discuss it being one of the good parts about the vehicle. When you're at lower speeds like a parking lot or getting in and out of garages or something that's not really that much steering force, the steering force for the wheel to actually like indicate or do anything is a lot lighter than as you're getting up to higher speeds. The force required to actually actuate the wheel is a lot higher. I do know there's a lot of cars and companies that do that, but what dawned on me is how well it was calibrated and the fact that I didn't notice it, and that's what makes it great. Volvo just calibrated it so great. There was never a part where it stuck out to me where this is like awkwardly light for the speed that I should be going or awkwardly heavy for the speed that I should be going. And I've definitely experienced that on other cars where the steering didn't feel right for the speed that we were progressing at. So absolutely hats off to Volvo for nailing the calibration on that. At least in my personal opinion. Maybe that would vary for you guys, but let me know what you think. Also, it should be worth noting within the gauge cluster and the settings, you can actually change the steering force required for your own personal settings if you do like it heavier or if you do like it lighter. However, it's currently tuned, not terrible in my opinion. So another one that I do want to discuss is the seats and the cabin comfort as something that is good and extremely appreciated in my book. So as I mentioned recently, some of the stuff that I did was some hikes during it, which actually changed my opinion on it. I've taken the vehicle off-roading. I've driven it through blizzards. I've taken it through several road trips where, for one of them, it was 4 passengers where we drove over 1,000 miles in the span of a week while they were visiting a town. Even when I first bought the car, I road tripped it from St. Louis, Missouri to Colorado in the span of one day, where I logged several hundred miles and it was just sitting nonstop. But it's all of this time spent in the vehicle where I've had it for 302 days. The car has been down for over a month or not driven for over a month, but I've logged 11,000 miles. Tells you that I've spent, a sizable portion of time in those seats and in the cabin, interacting with it and getting to know it. But the seats in the cabin are great. There's tons of adjustability in the seats. You have electronic lumbar to go up and down. You have the thigh extensions to go up and down. You have, just the standard suite of adjustments, but I think that the seats could be hit and miss with people. We'll cover that a little bit shortly, but I think having the heated wheel with 3 levels is a fantastic option, as well as having heated seats. But not to mention, just I have heated seats, but my passenger has 3-level heated seats, and I believe both my rears have 3-level heated seats. Everyone has air conditioning, and Volvo's isn't, for their rear seats, isn't at their knees. It's in the B pillar, which is the pillar in between the driver or the front and the rear seats. And it comes out about face height where you can aim it down at your torso. You can aim it up at your face easier. And then you have the heated seat. So when we were doing this trip and the temperatures were between like 20 degrees at the peaks of, getting into the mountains, and then we would get down into the deserts and the hot springs, and it's like 70 degrees, 80 degrees. And just the versatility of the cabin to keep all passengers comfortable was something that I think is underappreciated. It's also a quiet cabin and well insulated, at least in my opinion. Yes, it's no Lexus LS460 or LS500 now, honestly. Kind of dated myself with that one, but I don't care the most about new cars. It's no higher end, it's no Mercedes, it's no Maybach, but for what you would want for the price that you're paying, especially buying these used, it's an absolutely fantastic cabin. And I think the seats are something that should be appreciated a lot more. It's something where I don't get sick of the seats, or I've never noticed an issue with them. And I can't say the same with trying to road trip our Toyota Tacoma. That one, the seats, you would feel the foam kind of bottom out after a little bit, or wish that it had more lumbar support in our Subaru Outback. Or, there's just a lot of fatigue points in a lot of seats. But I'm someone that, as I previously mentioned, I drove a 2002 RSX with bucket seats. Absolutely loved the way those felt. Did so many road trips in it, and the seats just felt amazing. Then I had the 2008 TL. The seats were a little bit slick, but again, super supportive. So I think there's a trend here that I do like, seats that are more supportive and more firm, which is something that I personally love, but I could see a lot of people hating. Like I said, Volvo seats are supportive. They're firm. It's good bolstering. It's not this is where I think it might fail for some people. It's not your American car, couch cushion seats. It's not like your older Cadillac seats where it's just this is a lazy boy. It's not like your Jeep seats where, I'm only speaking because I've had a friend that has a Jeep Grand Cherokee that every time they sit in the car, they're like, wow, these seats really hug you, or they're not the widest seats. I definitely think the philosophy behind the seats is a lot different. Same with the intended market for who the seats were designed for and based around. It's not based for your average, or some average proportional people. It's built to be supportive, protect you, and one of Volvo's big things is safety. And if you support the body correctly, I do think it inherently increases the safety of the car, especially if it's minimizing the amount of lateral movement that you have. I think it is just a little bit safer inherently, and having the adjustability is something where you can extremely dial the seats into you. So maybe if the lumbar adjustment was dropped down, both in terms of the distance that it's coming out as well as the height, maybe it would be better off for them. But personally, I think the seats are absolutely amazing, and you can absolutely dial it into you. But yeah, personally for me, I think Volvo absolutely nails their seat designs and a lot of their interior ergonomics. Another one that I did kind of touch on in my previous video about the Volvo, which again should be linked in one of the corners at the start of the video, or it's pretty easy to find on my channel, but the dealership interactions with Volvo, I will put as good. And Volvo is really living up to that experience, I think, where I can see it being a little bit awkward because I am a young guy. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm also an engineer, where I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and I have a large interest in the automotive sector. But inherently, when I pull up from previous dealerships that I've had, I'm not taken the most seriously, at least at like Toyota dealerships even, or Subaru dealerships and other ones, where it seemed like they didn't think that I was actually like buying the car, I was interested in it, or it was something that they could just kind of, take advantage and throw in a lot of stuff out there. Like I didn't have the technical understanding of how stuff works, how stuff is intended to work, or what the baseline should be. But every interaction I've had with Volvo, they've been extremely respectful and courteous to me. And it's just something where even like talking with my technical advisors, I really appreciate it, where, some of the prior history on the car we're not super certain about. But we've been able to work through it. I had a transmission failure prior in my ownership, which was likely a result of the previous ownership, and I had a warranty from an outside company. My technical advisors in Volvo could have chosen not to accept that or not do a lot of the legwork that they did, because the outside warranty company was ungodly difficult to deal with and to work with. But again, Volvo was willing to do it, and I don't remember how many calls and how many hours it did, but it was an ungodly terrible process, and in the end, Volvo was able to save me $7,000 on the price of a transmission replacement. So I'm extremely blessed and thankful for my technical service advisors from Volvo and any interactions I've had with a dealership. Even then we've talked about, having dogs, having shelter pets, because I have the Colorado shelter pet and like rescue pet license plate. We talked about rescuing dogs. We've just had a lot of good interactions and good stuff. And I've been told that I was one of the most respectful and well-raised customers that they've had. Maybe it was just flattery, but I'll take it for what I am. And I will say thank you, Volvo, for the quality of your service department and the people at your dealerships that I've had the courtesy of interacting with. That goes for Steel Tahar Motors up in Colorado, as well as Rickenbaugh Volvo, as well as McDonald Volvo. All of them have been fantastic, and I primarily go to Rickenbaugh for myself just because it's closer and a lot of the openings there are great. But I think you guys will have a fantastic dealership interaction with Volvo. It just sometimes the scheduling can be a little bit difficult, but I do understand that it is busy, and since this car is not currently warranted through Volvo, that there is a little bit of a lower priority for everything to get fixed. And then finally, one that I would have never really thought about, but it's the underbody of the vehicle. When I was getting ready to go camping and doing some off-roading in the Volvo, I was kind of worried about the vehicle, especially the underbody, just because certain vehicles have a very interesting low point or weak point within the bottom of the vehicle, where if you look at Nissans and Infinitis, there is a lower point being the oil pan, and it's a plastic oil pan where people just smoke like a rock or something all the time. Absolutely dumps out their oil and it fails. Or there's something that's really exposed on the underneath the vehicle. Sometimes it's a transmission or a differential, or it's the oil pan, or even like just exposed underbody within the vehicle. So there's just a huge risk for damage to it. But when I actually reviewed the underbody of the Volvo, I never realized how flat and cladded it was. There's just the central area of it where the exhaust is running through. that is pretty much exposed, but everything to the sides is really flat and really covered, and even then, the open area of it is brought honestly to above or the same level as the flatness. So it's a very flat underbody with no awkward low points, and there's just good covering and cladding. So it's really good for aerodynamic purposes, again, because there's no places for air to really catch on the underneath of the vehicle, creating turbulent flow, which would ruin the just overall aerodynamic profile of the vehicle. But from a off-road and corrosion point, there's a lot less damage that can be inflicted if the first layer is just aerodynamic cladding underneath and protection. It's going to minimize the amount of physical damage. Then if you actually look at the corrosion warranty on a Volvo, I think Volvo does a 10-year corrosion warranty. I will pop a screenshot of that here or there, or it's an explanation, but it does kind of explain why Volvo is so confident in the corrosion protection of their vehicles and it lasting. There's a lot less dirt, debris, moisture, and stuff that can be kicked up into those panels and hold moisture to the components. Additionally, if you're in a climate that has winters and they're salting the roads or using other chemicals, it's not like you have rocks that are flicking up, damaging the coating on those materials, and then you have salt and other corrosives that are being kicked up and caked on to those vehicles, which could create other issues and damage to it. So it makes me really appreciate Volvo's corrosion warranty. Again, that's just something that's really niche and out there because it's not something you should worry about with modern vehicles. But I appreciate the flat underbody profile and how well protected the underneath of the vehicle is. Well, with that being said, let's kick it over to the bad. All right, let's put on our skeptic hats really quick here because no vehicle is perfect and every vehicle is going to have its flaws, and I stand by that. So let's talk about the bad that has happened over the last 11,000 miles. So first things first with bad items, my driver's seat bracket is having issues. Allegedly, apparently, when I was doing my, I got an oil change at like 57,000 miles on the odometer. Right now I'm at 61,000 miles, but I noticed there was a rattling coming from my driver's seat. And now inherently, I don't think I was the root cause for this rattling. I think that it was something that, you know, we're not sure of the original origin of it, but we'll go ahead and insert a video over here of what it was like with the driver's seat rattle so you guys can hear it. Yeah, so as you can hear, definitely not ideal, but I was talking with my dealership and my service people think that the bracket might be damaged or it might be bent. There could be some bushings and some other wear items that have just kind of degraded to the point where that is what is happening because there's accelerated wear applied to them. Now, I personally don't know what the prior owner of my vehicle is, but there are some signs where they might not have been the most gentle with it. We're not sure of the dimensions, the proportions, anything like that of the prior owner, so they could have been a larger person where they were just like, you know, slamming down and abusing their seat. They could have been like just slamming into the back of it constantly. There could have been a lot of other unexpected wear items and points that were coming up when it just came to how the vehicle was maintained and how they interacted with it. But it could have resulted in the premature wear to the seat bracket. However, I have talked with my Volvo service department. Replacing the seat bracket's not necessarily a cheap thing, as well as the labor, so I'm going to talk with my outside warranty company, see if they're going to be willing to cover it. We'll go into some arbitration, some debate over it, and then we'll probably get it replaced eventually. But talking with my Volvo service advisor and my service team, it's not something that's inherently a safety issue at this point, and there's no immediate need to replace it. It's more of just an annoyance thing, and potentially will become a larger issue down the line just because excess slop in the seat rail could become a safety issue over time. But then we can talk to the bad. I saw on forums a lot of people complaining about the infotainment. I've never had an issue with it until yesterday, 6/22/24, where my vehicle is over 5 years old at this point, has over 60,000 miles with it. I had my first infotainment glitch and failure ever in my entire ownership of the vehicle, over 300 days. I've only had one issue, so that's not terrible, but let's discuss it as a bad. So To give some context of the situation with it, I had just gotten gas, so the vehicle had just been turned on and it had not been running for that long. It was a hot day, and temperatures were internally in the car when I got into it after the gym had climbed to around 105 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. But it was a very, very short drive from the gym to the gas station. Then, it was turned off. So I don't really think the internal cabin or any of the electronics had time to get cooling to them for the short time the vehicle was running. So I would assume internal temperatures were relatively high for it. But after getting gas, I booted up the vehicle, turned everything on, then Bluetooth audio or streaming was connecting at the time. Then I was trying to get air conditioning to load and turn on, and that's when the failure occurred, or the glitch occurred. So first it started with my audio that started streaming right when I was loading in air conditioning, because everything's controlled through that center infotainment stack. But audio just kind of like didn't pause, but it held where it was at, so it was just doing like a repeated away from that one, and it froze the screen where I couldn't interact with AC or anything like that. I couldn't change the volume up or down. I couldn't skip the track, which is what I tried to do, just to see what was happening with the audio issue. And the screen did an initial reboot for itself and then launched back up like everything was good again. It connected Bluetooth. Then I tried to do the same thing to load my AC. It crashed it yet again, and I lost the sound of my turn signal clicking, because it's not an actual relay sound anymore. It's just audio pumped in through the speakers. But that is what it is. It did not affect the drivability of the car. And then the entire system rebooted the entire time. And I think that time was a full system reboot where I didn't ever lose my gauge cluster, I think. That one would have been weird, but I could tell that it did a full reboot because it reset my driver profile, where it changed my gauge cluster to the default gauge cluster. I used the minimal gauge cluster, not the one with the circles and stuff around the rings. So that was my indicator that it had done a complete full reboot. And then you could see it do the reboot where it launched into my driver profile. It changed my gauge cluster. It reconnected Bluetooth streaming, and I was able to turn on air conditioning. And since then, there has been no issues, no sign of anything going wrong. So after the 2 to 3 times that it rebooted, everything was fine. I never lost power to the vehicle, or it didn't affect much away from being able to turn on my air conditioning and have sound for like the 3-4 minutes that it was. However, it was a really sweaty experience, to be honest, because it does control the AC. It was already a hot day and you're inside a vehicle. So a lot of just the trapped heat kind of made you really sweat, but it wasn't terrible. I never checked it, but it affected like my window switches or my mirrors or anything like that. But honestly, I would just call it a little bit of an electrical glitch, or a software glitch especially. And I can't really blame the car or say that it's a consistent or repeated issue, but I will report back if it's something that happens more often. And, it was just minorly annoying. It is something that happened too on my previous loaner Volvo, but that one was a new model year with the Android-based infotainment. And I think the situation behind that one was a little bit different because I could still run my heat, I could still run my heated seats. It never affected the drivability of the car. I just lost all audio in that one, and I think I talked about that in the previous video or one of my videos regarding Volvo. But I just didn't have turn signal noises, I didn't have audio. And then went into the gym, got out of the gym, everything was fine. So all the software issues that I've had have been pretty minor, honestly. So I'll give it fine for that one, but again, it's bad. Another niche or random bad one that I have. The trunk is hard. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does that mean? Well, as I said prior in the video, I do want to just add this in, but I did some car camping, I hiked some 14ers, and man, the Volvo's trunk is hard and it has some ridges. I would definitely recommend, if you're planning on doing some car camping inside your Volvo or some extended stays inside your Volvo, I would invest in a decent sleep setup, like at least some sleeping pads, maybe like quite a few blankets doubled up. Something to just where you can't feel the floor of the Volvo. I really botched that in my execution, and it was uncomfortable to sleep in my trunk / my back seats because I had my back seats folded down and then was laying both straight on as well as like at a slight angle, and trying to sleep in my trunk. And let me tell you, you can feel that floor mat, you can feel the transition in between the trunk and the seats, you can just feel everything, and it's not necessarily the most comfortable. That's 100% my fault and not part of the design of the Volvo that I'm aware of, but something that I do want to note, on a bonus point for something that is good, which, you know, I don't really care because I don't fold my seats in the Volvo that often down, but it is a really flat load floor. Like if you look from the entrance of the trunk through the end of the load floor, through the transition, it is a fairly flat incline, so it's not like there's a giant lip for you to load stuff over or on top of. And then even then, it's not like there's a secondary lip in there that's making you lose space. It was relatively flat, and that made it comfortable. It was just hard. So credit where credit is due. Also, on the topic of car camping and sleeping in the Volvo, the insulation works really great. I believe temperatures when we were on the mountain at night got down to 30s to 40s. You felt absolutely great inside the cabin with no power running, just the windows slightly cracked. Yeah, you never really got too cold. So shout out to them for a great insulated cabin. It even shows passively when the vehicle's not running and the ability to camp within it. But I digress. Another bad one that I've had, which I've had on every single vehicle that's had the feature, memory mirrors. And I feel like every vehicle I've had these, they work great a lot of the time, but they just never fully work right. They will just like randomly adjust or lose their home position, it feels like, and where it's saved never really lines up. And I do admit first that this might be an entirely me issue that you guys might not experience. Maybe when I'm getting into my seating position and stuff like that, you know, maybe my head's not in the right positioning, maybe my butt's not in the right position, where it's changing the level at which my eyes are at. So then that would be changing where my eyes are hitting my mirrors at, which makes them feel like they've moved. But personally, that's just something I feel like I've experienced on both my Acuras as well as my Volvos now. But I do understand from an engineering perspective how memory mirrors can have issues inherently with them. One, just as depending on the motors that are being used within it, there is just motor drifting, or they can just kind of lose their home positioning, especially if it's not being saved. If there's any noise or interference in the system, it could cause the mirrors to go to the wrong points, or they could just overshoot or undershoot their positions when they're going into it. Additionally, motors just wear over time, so it's not something that I'm super concerned about or super big annoyance. A lot of times it's just, you know, I have to change my passenger side mirror up or down a little bit, maybe pull it in slightly, pull it out slightly, and then from there just override my memory options. And it's pretty good for the next few weeks, days, months, really, it just kind of depends. But it is something that I notice. But with that being said, those are the biggest bad points that I've found within the Volvo so far. But we'll throw it over to a different version of myself to discuss the ugly of the car. Alright, thank you for the introduction, Bad Gabe. But now let's talk about the ugly for owning a 2019 Volvo XC60 with the T6 engine and the R design. First of all, that's a mouthful to say what it is. But the cost of ownership. In my approximate calculation of cost per mile of ownership, it is about $3.36 at my current rate for cost of ownership. This is including the purchase cost of the vehicle, as well as my scheduled service at $60K, my oil change that I did prior to it at $57K, a tire mounting, balancing, rotation, calibration of the safety systems when I first got the vehicle, because we weren't sure how well calibrated they were. We had just done the tires, so we did an alignment, everything like that. First of all, tires, 21-inch tires. My God, are those expensive. Never had anything like that, and I'm kind of contemplating a second set of wheels for winter/off-roading, just so I've got something with a little bit more sidewall and grip, but I digress. Also done in that time has been a main battery for the car, one singular door seal because it was coming unadhered. Again, that's referenced in my prior video, and since then I would just recommend touching them up with like regular seals or seam sealer. It works so much better because they're double-sided taped, and it's just not that good. Check engine light diagnostics and software update. That was causing my vehicle to have a check engine light, a new transmission, which I will add in a note that that is most likely a completely statistical outlier, and that was a quiescent failure, which might have been why I got the vehicle for the price that I did, relative to the mileage, comparable engines, and other options, as well as why it was sitting on a dealership lot for, or a few dealership lots for a year or so prior to me purchasing the vehicle. It might have been longer than that one, but there was a transmission issue that was undisclosed to me. That is something that would explain why the vehicle was sitting for so long, why the previous owner decided to sell the vehicle, or if it was just a completely latent failure that we were unaware of, where it was my transmission control unit or something else within the transmission died and ended up, making the vehicle unable to shift past a certain point. And that one really kind of screwed me. But statistical outlier, it just was really expensive and really drives up that cost of ownership. This is excluding washing, paint protection, and other stuff that I have done. That would be outside the normal maintenance and ownership cost of this vehicle. But my personal ownership cost of the vehicle has been $3.36 per mile. Also, I did factor in fuel at this one. We're over 11,000 miles at about 30, so it was 11,000 miles at about 24.4 miles per gallon was the math, and then times a average fuel rate for the Colorado, just because that's where most of my fuel has been purchased for 91 octane, I believe was the calculation I did for that one, and it ended up being roughly around, I spent $1,510 on fuel. If you guys want to know about any of the other service costs, whether it was my transmission, how much wheels cost, how much an oil change cost, how much a 60K service cost, let me know, and I can either do a breakdown in the description or a follow-up video where we go more into depth on the maintenance cost of it. But $3.36 per mile is a rough pill to swallow. That's pretty much just the cost of a gallon of gas per mile, right? Yeah, per mile, because a gallon of gas is about like $3.25 to $3.35. So that's kind of brutal. But evidently, as the vehicle has a lot more bugs and other stuff ironed out of it, and as mileage hopefully continues to be put on the vehicle without other maintenance costs being added to the vehicle away from regularly scheduled maintenance, we should hopefully see that cost per mile start to decline more. Obviously, if we were to exclude the transmission, because that one was a really expensive one, even with an outside company warranty, not through Volvo warranty, I want to say that one. However, it is now warranted by Volvo, because if you replace it through Volvo and it's a Volvo genuine part, lifetime warranty is applied to it with some restrictions. So if we hit a new transmission again, it should hopefully be less painful. But yeah, that is definitely one of my two ugly points that I have for the vehicle. Another ugly point for the vehicle, which is going to be really niche, and I understand that the vehicle is not purpose-built for it, but it is off-road mode. For me, I've noticed that it was really inconsistent and not good in my opinion. It does good in certain aspects, which I can discuss, but it also does really poor in some aspects. So first, I've used it during the winter when we had a lot of snow, and for that it works great. It obviously restricts your top speed, but it allows for more wheel spin within the system, and it just allows the system to work somewhat better uninhibited, which for that application, it works great. Then we have, when I've gone into the mountains, I've gone hiking, there's been off-roading and other stuff. I've used it going both ways, uphill or up mountain as well as down mountain, or uphill and downhill. Going uphill, in my opinion, it worked absolutely great. It allowed for some other slip in sections where it should have been allowing more slip, which granted, I understand that because it is off-road mode. Granted, the all-wheel drive system never had an issue at that time. That was 100% tire issue, because I am on all seasons, which are Michelin Cross Climate 2s. So, not the most versatile tire, especially for off-road. They're just not purpose-built for that one, so I will accept the issue of that one. But that mode works great for going up mountains. It felt like it was more comfortable holding a lower gear and holding lower speed. It handled it fantastically. Let it slip way more. So I know what you're thinking as of this point. Why are you putting this in as the ugly? Well, now we get to going down from the mountain. Well, hill descent control really wanted to work during this time. I have no idea why. There's no inherently easy way to disable hill descent control through the side menu, through the other side menu. It also does not appear to be tied with the left-hand side of the steering wheel controls, where you can't click the regular cruise control button to disable it or do anything like that one. It just constantly wanted to override me, and within the menus of the vehicle, there was no easy option to get to disable hill descent control, which, you know, that would be great if hill descent control worked well, right? Well, it really felt like it wanted to override my own controls of my brake, which, first of all, extremely sketchy, and just for that one, it goes in the ugly one. Don't override the driver's control of the vehicle in any instance, in my case, or at least in that option where it's such a low speed and, you know, maybe there's an emergency section off-road where you need to hit that brake or you need some power. Don't have the drive mode overriding driver control, or at least hill descent control doing it. But that is just mine. Additionally, it felt like it really wanted to hold the vehicle at such a higher speed than needed, where I would be actively applying the brake and it would just be overriding that one and just letting the vehicle climb in speeds. And it was in sections where some sections, you know, it could do great. There wasn't a lot of obstacles. There wasn't a lot of rocks where you're worried about sidewall damage or you're worried about, you know, damage to the tire. But then there's other sections where it's just like absolutely feeling like the vehicle's accelerating. It is actually accelerating, and hill descent control is overriding it, where the brake application is going, but it's not necessarily slowing down the vehicle. So you're just kind of bombing into ruts and other stuff, and it just feels like it's overriding the brake pedal, and that's my huge issue with it. As well as it feels really aggressive with the speed that it's trying to hold and go for. Again, maybe it's an issue with the calibration of my system, and it just really felt like it was taking a toll on the brakes, and it just was a clunky system for how it was going downhill. Again, I absolutely hated it for how it handled braking, how it felt like it was overriding my brake, for the amount of control that it was giving the user, especially on the downhill portions, and with hill descent control being active. If there's a quick way to disable hill descent control, I could absolutely recommend using it. But with that being said, I don't know if in the future, when I am going down mountains or using it in a section where it is going to have hill descent control automatically kicking in, that it's something that I'm going to want to use. Because, I'll be honest, it was about 6 miles off-road one way, and I was able to use it no issue going all the way up for 6 miles, and then only used it about halfway on the way down, because it was just an absolutely horrendous user experience going downhill. So I would say, Volvo, please adjust that or fix that, but it's not something that I enjoyed or felt safe using. And for that reasoning, I have to put it in the ugly category, because if you could easily disable hill descent control, that's one thing. And if you could, if you could easily disable hill descent control, that's one thing, and it would give it major points. But the fact that it felt like it was overriding my brake as well as my accelerator, that absolutely puts it in the ugly category. So Volvo, I would recommend please fixing that. Or if there's anything that can be done to change that, let me know down below. But with that being said, that is my 11,000 mile ownership update of that one. If there's any question, comments, or concerns about the vehicle or that you guys have, drop it down below. Feel free to send this to Volvo. I will be sending this video to Volvo, but they will have no ownership over this video, and they do not have any editorial ownership of this prior to it being posted. They don't even know this is being posted. But if there's any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them down below. Feel free to subscribe, hit the bell button if you want to, or that's something you're interested to, and feel free to drop a like. But with that being said, let me know if there's anything I can do, or if there's any things that you would like to see addressed in the next vehicle. In the next video about this vehicle. And we will probably review my tires at some point, just because why not? I think tires are the greatest amount of contact that you have with the ground. Really change the driving experience and interaction with the vehicle. But I hope you guys have a great day.